Ever wonder if it is too late to chase a big dream? Or if you have got what it takes to completely flip your life upside down after the big 5-0? Well, we are John and Karen, and for the last 3 years, our 30-foot camper van, the Wanderer, has been our home, our transport, and our ringside seat to the world. We traded sensible shoes for hiking boots, boardrooms for beach bonfires, and a life of routine for the glorious uncertainty of the open road. Today, though, as the mist clung to the Quelan Mountains on the Isle of Skye, I found myself thinking less about the miles ahead and more about the incredible journey I have been on with Karen, right here beside me. It is not just about the places we have seen, it is about what we have learned, especially what I have learned, often through her example. The plan for the day had been ambitious, even for us, a challenging 8-mile hike to a remote loch, whispered about in local guidebooks as achingly beautiful. Karen was already humming, pouring coffee that smelled like heaven in our compact kitchen, her energy a bright counterpoint to the moody highland landscape outside. "Morning, sleepyhead," she chirped, handing me a steaming mug. "The mountains are calling, and I must go," or something like that. I managed a smile. "Morning." They look like they are still wearing their pajamas. The clouds were indeed stubbornly low. "You think this weather will lift?" "Always does, eventually," she said with that easy optimism that I still sometimes marveled at. "Besides, a little mist adds to the mystique, does it not?" We had our breakfast, the usual Vanlife ballet of moving things, stowing things, and trying not to bump elbows too often. I did the pre-drive checks on the Wanderer. She was an old girl, a 2005 model we had lovingly converted, but lately, there had been a slight hesitation in the engine, a little cough I was trying to ignore but that tickled the back of my mind. "Everything all right, love?" Karen asked, noticing my frown. "Yeah, just thinking," I said, not wanting to voice the worry just yet. We packed our day packs, filled water bottles, and with a final check that everything was secure, I turned the key. The Wanderer rumbled to life, a familiar, comforting sound. Mostly. We set off, the narrow Skye roads winding ahead of us like unraveling ribbons. The scenery was, as promised, breathtaking. Jagged peaks stabbed at the bruised sky, and vast, empty glens swept down to steely grey lochs. Karen was in her element, pointing out hardy sheep perched on impossible ledges and wildflowers clinging to life in rocky crevices. "Look, John. Is that an eagle?" she would exclaim, and I would dutifully slow down, squinting into the distance. Then, about halfway to our intended trailhead, the Wanderer gave more than a cough. It was a definite, spluttering choke, followed by a disconcerting loss of power. My stomach lurched. "Oh no, not now," I muttered, pulling over to the side of the single-track road as best I could. The engine died with a sigh. Silence descended, broken only by the bleating of a distant sheep and the whistling wind. My immediate reaction was a familiar surge of frustration, that old city-dweller impatience flaring up. "Right, that is just perfect, is it not? Miles from anywhere." Karen, however, simply unbuckled her seatbelt. "Well, she is obviously trying to tell us something," she said calmly. "Let us go and listen." That was the first lesson Karen reinforced in me that day, though it had been a recurring theme in our travels, the art of patience, of treating a problem not as a personal affront but as a puzzle. She got out her toolkit, she was always more mechanically minded than I was, and lifted the engine cover. "No use getting cross, John. It will not help her feel any better." I took a deep breath, the crisp Highland air doing little to cool my initial annoyance. But watching her, methodical and unruffled as she checked connections and hoses, I felt my own tension ease a fraction. She did not panic, she just addressed the situation. "Could be the fuel filter again," she mused, more to herself than to me. "Or that dodgy sensor we talked about." After 20 minutes of tinkering, during which I mostly tried to stay out of her way and offer moral support, and the occasional torch beam, she managed to get the Wanderer started again. It was still rough, but it was running. "I think," she said, wiping grease from her hands, "our ambitious hike might need a rethink." We should probably find a village with a garage, or at least a decent phone signal, just in case. My heart sank a little. The lock had sounded so magical. But she was right, of course. Pushing on would be foolish. Okay, I agreed, a bit deflated. Lead the way to civilization. Then, this was where the second lesson began to unfold, one I often learned from Karen, embracing spontaneity and finding the unexpected joy in detours. The original plan was scuppered, but that did not mean the day was lost. We limped along, the wanderer grumbling its displeasure. Instead of turning towards the remote trailhead, we consulted our slightly temperamental GPS for the nearest sign of life, which turned out to be a tiny coastal village called Dorney, nestled beside a picturesque loch and dominated by the iconic Eilean Donan Castle. It was not on our itinerary, but as we drove down the steep hill into its small, stone-built heart, I had to admit it had a certain charm. Well, this is rather lovely, is it not? Karen said, her earlier disappointment about the hike already fading. Let us park up and have a wander while we try and find someone who knows about engines. We found a small parking spot near the village shop. While I was still mentally cataloging potential engine problems and costs, Karen had already spotted a little art gallery tucked away down a side street. Oh, come on, John. Just a quick peek. It will take your mind off things. I grumbled good-naturedly but followed her in. The gallery was tiny, filled with vibrant paintings of the local landscape and quirky ceramic puffins. The artist, a woman with paint-splattered jeans and a warm smile, looked up from her work. Hello there. Welcome. And just like that, Karen was in conversation, admiring a particular watercolor of the castle. Your work is beautiful, she said genuinely. We are just passing through, our van is having a bit of a tantrum. This was Karen all over, her ability to connect with people effortlessly, to turn a simple encounter into a warm exchange. That was the third lesson simmering, the sheer power of connection, often initiated by her open, friendly nature. The artist, whose name was Fiona, chuckled. Oh, a temperamental camper, eh? I know the feeling. My old Land Rover is the same. What seems to be the trouble? Karen described the symptoms, and Fiona nodded thoughtfully. Sounds like it could be a number of things, but if you want someone who really knows his way around older engines, you want to speak to Old Man McCrae. He is a bit of a legend. His garage is just on the edge of the village, past the bridge. Tell him Fiona sent you. That is incredibly kind, thank you. Karen beamed. We will do that. We bought a small puffin figurine, Karen said it would be our mascot for overcoming vehicular adversity, and headed off in search of McCrae's garage. See? Karen said, nudging me. If the wanderer had not thrown a wobbly, we would never have found this lovely village, or met Fiona, or got this tip. She had a point. My initial frustration was giving way to a grudging appreciation for the unplanned turn of events. McCrae's garage was less a modern workshop and more an Aladdin's cave of automotive parts, tools, and what looked like several generations of discarded machinery. Mr. McCrae himself was a man of few words, with hands like gnarled oak branches and eyes that twinkled with a shrewd intelligence. He listened to Karen's explanation, then to my more technical, worried additions, with a series of grunts. He said finally. Could be. He then proceeded to spend the next hour poking, prodding, and listening to the wanderer's wheezing engine with an almost zen-like focus. Karen chatted away to him, asking about the village, his family, the best place for fish and chips. I, on the other hand, hovered anxiously, trying to decipher his grunts. Eventually, with a triumphant "ha," he emerged from under the bonnet holding a small, frayed wire. There's your trouble. Intermittent connection to the fuel pump. Vibration makes it lose contact. She's an old lass, needs a bit of understanding. He replaced the wire with a new, sturdy one, tightened a few other connections for good measure, and then, with a grin, said, that'll be 20 quid, and tell Fiona I said thanks for the customers. 20 quid. I had been bracing myself for hundreds. The relief was immense. I paid him gratefully, shaking his strong hand. The Wanderer started with a confident roar, smoother than she had sounded in weeks. As we drove away, Karen was practically bouncing in her seat. Success. See, John. A little faith, a little chat, and a local expert. And your uncanny ability to charm everyone we meet, I added, feeling a wave of affection. To celebrate, Karen insisted we follow another piece of Mr. McCrae's advice: fish and chips from the van by the harbor. We sat on a weathered wooden bench, the salty air whipping our hair, watching oystercatchers dabbling at the water's edge. The chips were scalding hot, the fish flaky and delicious. It was, quite possibly, the best meal I had eaten in months. And that was the fourth lesson crystallizing: the profound joy found in simple things, especially when seasoned with relief and gratitude. The grand hike was forgotten, replaced by the simple, perfect pleasure of a smoothly running van and a shared, greasy-fingered feast. Later that afternoon, with the Wanderer purring contentedly, we found a beautiful, quiet spot overlooking a different, smaller loch, not our original destination, but stunning nonetheless. We did go for a walk, shorter and gentler than planned, but the views were still magnificent, the air still clean and invigorating. We saw a family of deer grazing peacefully in the distance. As evening drew in, we sat outside the Wanderer, wrapped in blankets, mugs of tea warming our hands. The sky had cleared, and a million stars were beginning to prick the darkening canvas. It was one of those perfect van life moments. You know, Karen, I began, looking at her silhouetted profile against the fading light, I think I learned a lot today. Or rather, you reminded me of a few important things. She turned, her eyes soft. Oh. Like what? Well, for starters, I said, how you handle things when they go wrong. I was ready to blow a gasket back there when the van stopped. You just got on with it. Calmly. That patience is something I am still working on. She smiled. We balance each other out, John. You do the meticulous planning, I do the winging it when the plan goes sideways. And then there is the detour, I continued. I was so focused on the missed hike, but Dorney was lovely. Meeting Fiona, finding McCrae, that was all because things did not go to plan. You always see the opportunity in the unexpected. That is a gift. This was the beauty in imperfection, the detour's gift, a lesson she lived so naturally. Life's too short to get hung up on rigid itineraries, especially when you live in a house on wheels, she said, leaning her head on my shoulder. The best adventures are often the ones you do not plan. And asking for help, I mused. Or rather, your way of connecting with people that makes asking for help feel like just having a friendly chat. Fiona, McCrae, they wanted to help because you were genuinely interested in them. I often hesitated, too proud or too shy, but Karen just dived in. People are mostly good, John. And everyone has a story, or a piece of advice, if you just take the time to listen. The fish and chips by the harbor. That tasted like a Michelin-starred meal today, I chuckled. Purely because everything else had fallen into place. It's funny how the simple things become so huge when you're living like this. Gratitude for a running engine and a hot meal, it put a lot of life's other little stresses into perspective. This led me to what I considered the fifth lesson of the day, or perhaps a constant lesson in our life together on the road, the incredible strength in our partnership. We make a good team, you know, I said quietly. When that engine died, part of me wanted to just sit in despair. But knowing you were there, ready to tackle it with me, or for me if needed, that makes all the difference. Today, her optimism had been the perfect foil to my anxiety. We shared the burden, and it felt lighter. Always, John, she whispered. You are the navigator, I am the chief morale officer and occasional mechanic's assistant. The sixth lesson, which had been dawning on me all afternoon, was about finding beauty not just in the perfect, postcard moments, but in the slightly messy, imperfect reality of it all. This whole day, I reflected, it was not what we set out for. It was frustrating, then worrying, then unexpectedly charming, then hugely relieving. And you know what? It was richer for all of that. More memorable than if we had just done the hike and ticked it off the list. Karen had picked up a uniquely shaped piece of sea-smooth driftwood in Dorney, turning it over in her hands now. Like this, she'd said earlier. Not perfect, but it has character. Our day had character. And that brought me to the biggest lesson, the one that underpins this whole crazy, wonderful adventure we embarked on after 50. It is the seventh lesson, and perhaps the one Karen embodies most effortlessly, the crucial importance of living fully, not just safely or predictably. Watching you today, Karen, I said, so engaged with everything, whether it was a faulty engine or a new village or a chat with a stranger, you just dive into life. You are not afraid to get your hands dirty, or your heart opened. I spend so much time worrying about what might go wrong, and you are busy experiencing what is going right, or what could be made right. She squeezed my hand. We are in this together, learning together. You have taught me so much too, you know. Your quiet strength, your thoughtfulness. How you always make sure the wanderer is safe and sound for us. Maybe, I conceded. But your zest, your refusal to let the little anxieties overshadow the big adventure, that is the core of why we are doing this, is it not? To really live, to feel it all. Not to just glide through the years. And you are my constant reminder of that. Sometimes I feel like I am still shedding that old, cautious skin I wore for so many decades, and you are the sunshine helping me do it. She smiled, a genuine, warm Karen smile that could melt glaciers. Well, I think you are doing a pretty good job of it, Mr. Adventurer. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the stars blazing with an intensity you only get far from city lights. The air was cold now, but we were warm, huddled together. The failed hike to the achingly beautiful loch was a distant memory, replaced by the vivid tapestry of an unplanned day, woven with small challenges, unexpected kindnesses, and quiet triumphs. Tomorrow, we would make new plans. Maybe we would even try for that elusive loch again, now that the wanderer was feeling sprightly. Or maybe we would find another detour, another unexpected path. That is the beauty of this life, the not knowing, the freedom to choose, the constant invitation to engage. As I finally drifted off to sleep later, with the gentle sounds of the Highland night outside, I thought about those 7 lessons. Patience in the face of setbacks. Joy in the unplanned detours. The power of human connection. Gratitude for simple pleasures. Strength in partnership. Beauty in imperfection. And above all, the courage to live fully, with an open heart. These were not just lessons for van life, they were lessons for life, full stop. And I was incredibly lucky to have Karen, my amazing wife and co-pilot, to navigate them with, 1 mile, and 1 story, at a time. Thanks for being with us on this little reflection. We hope it gives you a bit of inspiration, or at least a chuckle. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and keep living fully, whatever that means to you. We will see you down the road.